Well, Dua Lipa would imply that the vibes are high. I don't know what the vibes are around the NFL, but it's been messy for sure. Welcome back to the show. Now, anytime there's a mess, we need to call Dianna Russini to help us clean it up. She is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can read all the great work that she does with her colleagues at theathletic.com. Well worth your subscription. You can also check out everything that she is doing on social media at DM Russini is where you can follow along. Hello, friend.
Well, when he started off saying when there's mess, here comes Dianna, I'm thinking to myself, that is just not that's not the role I want in the space of the NFL. But unfortunately, I think I chose this. And on a week like this, where we're seeing a lot of turnover and firings and hirings, it's been a busy one, especially knowing we actually have football this weekend, which is crazy to think about because we've seen so much go down over the last 72 hours.
Are you going to any games this week? Lucas brought that up, the fact that we haven't talked about any of these games, and for obvious reasons, they've been eliminated since Christmas around here, so I haven't been thinking about playoff football for quite some time. But are you doing games this weekend?
Yeah, I'm most likely doing the Kansas City game, and so just to get back in the mix and have to do all of that after a week like this, where so much of this gathering of information to find out what coaches are getting hired is also filled with conversations of people that are on coaching staff, family members that are part of staff that want answers and information of what else is out there. So it's just been one of those weeks where my phone is stuck to a charger because I can't put it down for it to continually get the battery power it needs. So I'm actually standing next to the wall in my bedroom right now with the charger connected to it. I need one of those Mophis, perhaps for my birthday coming up in a few weeks. The show could throw me one of those.
Oh, well, given that you are taking time out of your very busy schedule, I think the least that we can do, maybe I'll get Lucas to pitch in even, since you like him so much more. Dianna Russini here with us on 104.5 The Zone. By the way, if you need to bail, just let us know and bail as necessary. How would you rate the level of mess that is currently going on just down the street from us compared to the rest of the mess around the NFL right now?
Not that bad, actually. It always feels worse when you guys are there, and especially someone like you who you have so many conversations with people that are part of the organization. I'm still getting players reaching out, kind of trying to find out what really happened. Still in shock a bit. You guys saw that I had posted my conversation with Derrick Henry when it was all going down. I was actually on the phone with him when it happened. And had to put the phone down so I could tweet it. I said, wait, hold on for a second. Mike Vrabel just got fired. And he's like, wait, what? Screaming on the other end of the phone. He's like, wait, are you kidding? I'm like, I'm not kidding. He really didn't believe it. And he's like, oh my, he was quiet. And then eventually, I think once he gathered his thoughts, he shared with me what what I tweeted about, which was that he has belief that he'll get another job, and he was a leader of men. And he was appreciative of everything he did. So I think the shock, even though there was a lot of smoke around this leading into it, I think there was still a lot of shock, not just obviously in Nashville, but around the league. I know my phone was blowing up from other GMs and head coaches just saying, what? Why? What happened? I think a lot of people thought that there was maybe a bigger problem, like a one big blow up that caused this. But as we've all found out, I think over the last few days, it sounds like there were a lot of little issues that continued to just build up over the years. And eventually ownership said, I've had enough.
Theathletic.com is where you can read Dianna's piece, her latest piece that went out with Joe Rexrode, our friend, this morning. Why Titans fired Mike Vrabel, a story of festering slights and a lack of communication. To your point, no one big blow-up really, it seems, set this thing in motion, but that can almost be more problematic when you let these issues bubble beneath the surface the way that it seems that they did. And having read your article and having talked to people myself, able to confirm everything in there, obviously, that Dianna has put together. Other than the Texans, I don't know for sure, Dianna, but I'm obviously going to trust your reporting here that the Texans game, when they lost to the Texans in embarrassing fashion, was the moment where I think it really crystallized, as you've articulated for Amy Adams-Strunk, that would be the moment that they would move on, or that they would move on from Mike Vrabel after that moment. You can't get your ownership group embarrassed. Were you surprised that she took the Patriots' comments, the comments that he made in New England, as much to heart as she seems to have?
I don't. I think obviously anytime you have an emotional connection to something and have achieved as much as Mike Vrabel has, and I think he perhaps may have been caught up in that moment of being inducted. I know that was something that was really important to him, to be part of that Ring of Honor, something that I think he wanted to happen. And from what I understand, the organization was really excited for him and supported that decision for him to take the bye week and go up there to be a guest of Robert Kraft and obviously all the ceremonial events that we saw, not just on Sunday, but on Saturday when he actually was inducted. But I do think that there were some things said and some visuals that you saw on television that you can understand from the ownership perspective of why that could rub them the wrong way, knowing that this is an opponent and he is now a head coach somewhere else. And to hear, when you go back and look at the quote that he said to the crowd that day of, "You don't realize how good you have it here," you immediately think, well, what's so good there that we don't have? Or what is it about what you're doing in Nashville that you don't like so much that you felt the need to rise up or at least highlight what it was in New England? So some of that, I actually understood some of that. And look, there's been people that have asked me about it and said, that comes off petty, it comes off sensitive. What did she expect him to do? I had someone else ask, why didn't she attend it to show her support for him getting the induction? So look, it sounds to me, after having a lot of conversations with so many different people in the organization, that there was a lot of emotion between Mike Vrabel and ownership. And, I'm surprised that it got to that point without a real conversation to get everything out on the table. I think difficult conversations are hard to have in these situations. As strong of a personality as Mike is and as comfortable as he seems to be with conflict and with just addressing issues, it's the bottom line. It's almost like a life lesson. The bottom line is, if you don't talk about it, if you're not sharing what the problem is and what you want, especially coming from the ownership side of, this is what we want, this is what we envision for you and for this team, then you're going to fall into the space that they're in right now, which is they fired a coach that many around the league think is a top 5 head coach and somebody that's going to get an opportunity at almost every single one of these openings.
Dianna Russini is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. At DM Russini is where you can follow her on the socials to check out all the great work that she's doing for The Athletic and all her insights and information that will continue to be produced, even though her phone is about to blow up in her hands, I'm certain. My experience with Mike Vrabel over 6 years, Dianna, and I know you've worked with him and covered him in some capacity or another during his tenure in the league. He is at his most comfortable when you are at your least comfortable, in my experience. So to that end, how much of that, and I don't want to extrapolate if it's not there, but how much of that might have been intentional from Mike Vrabel to further make the situation uncomfortable in ways that would lend itself to reports of Mike Vrabel and the Patriots and trades and things like that, and maybe he's not happy with Rand Carthon. Is there a rift? All these different things. Addressing the problem would alleviate the issues, it seems. What if the intention was never to address the problem and to continue to let the problems fester?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could look at this a couple ways. I think the perspective from talking to people close to him that he had was, I'm not going to walk around and tell everybody here in this building that the story coming out from a reporter in Boston about me and Rand not getting along, or perhaps me wanting to go back to New England and that I just really enjoyed it. If that's not the truth, that's not what I did. I can't spend my time trying to put out rumors and false information. I'm just going to focus on what I need to do. And then the other side of it is, well, the noise is there and there are concerns, and you are a gigantic part of this organization and the face of it. So when there's smoke like this and there's chatter and rumors and it's picking up speed as the season's coming to an end and you're not winning games, how much effort would have taken to just sit down and say, hey, by the way, I want to be here. And he said it in his press conference. I don't know if he ever said it directly to ownership, to Rand, to anyone else that would be part of the decision. But it's obvious that he didn't do it enough. And if you saw in my article that on Thanksgiving morning, I put out a piece about this organization's belief that he's the future. And not only did I write it, I wrote it with sass. And I wrote it with sass because I had comfort in the information I was given that the Titans believed that Mike Vrabel was going to be the future. And they wanted to work with him due to the fact that he is a really smart football mind and he is respected. And, he's a member of the competition committee. He does a lot of the right, he checks off a lot of the right boxes, setting the culture, all the things that we've seen over the last few seasons, and him getting the most out of this roster and some of these players and being able to find a way to win, right? So we know all of that. But what went wrong, right? So from Thanksgiving to Tuesday of this week, something shifted dramatically to go from he is the future to goodbye. Something had to change. And I don't truly believe now that I reflect on it that those thoughts weren't there all season long. They had to be, because to make that decision is a really hard one. And I do know it was a difficult one. This wasn't something where ownership woke up and said, I'm doing it today. Amy didn't say, I am firing him. I'm done with him. I'm just so mad about it. No, it weighed on her. And they expected the repercussions to be what they are. This isn't, they know that the whole league is looking at them going, why would you fire Mike Vrabel? But in the end, they felt that the future of the team would be in better hands with a different voice and a different leader if they want to go win a Super Bowl. That's what they truly believe.
Absent from this, beyond the press conference, that I don't know how much of it you caught with Rand Carthon, but it felt like they did that man a terrible disservice by sending him out there to answer questions that he would not or could not answer. I thought it was a huge waste of his time and everybody else's time based on how that went down. But in the absence of ownership taking a podium, not everybody's Jerry Jones. I get it, whatever. Rand, in all of this, Mike wanted Ryan Cowden, who I know you know and has been around the league for a long time in various capacities and was here for several years under John Robinson as his number 2. Mike wanted Cowden. They didn't want Mike to have Cowden as the general manager. One, because you're not going to promote the number 2 of the guy that you just fired, given that the biggest issue is the roster. And 2, because that would have essentially given Mike Vrabel the roster control that he was after that they did not want him to have.
Correct. That is pretty much how that all came together, and they decided to go in a different direction. And from what I gather, when Vrabel met with Rand Carthon, he really liked him. He thought he was really good. He just didn't think that this was the right time for him to become the general manager when there was going to be a lot of upheaval as they were searching for their new quarterback. And he suggested that they hire Rand, but they just make him the assistant GM and then look for someone with just more experience, in hopes that Rand can continue to learn and then be ready. And from what I gather, ownership said, great, thanks, no thanks, don't appreciate that. That's not what we're doing. And then obviously we see the arranged marriage that happened. Now, in terms of the relationship, I know you shared it on your show before, and I'm sure you've tweeted about it. They got along really well. They really liked each other actually a lot. That was never a problem. It was never about like Rand Carthon versus Mike Vrabel power plays internally. I never got that sense. And I think this was really more about Mike Vrabel wanting it to be a certain way, and it wasn't on the same page as how the Titans saw it and how they wanted it to look. And they didn't want this to just be all Mike Vrabel. And they pointed to different organizations like we've seen in New England, like we've seen with the Houston Texans with Billy O'Brien, where that formula is not something Tennessee wants to do. They don't want that type of power structure. And it's why in this upcoming coaching hire, I don't believe they are going to go after a type of personality that you just saw. I think you're going to look. They're targeting collaboration. It's a word we've been hearing all year long. So I believe the candidate that can describe how that's going to work is going to be the one that can get the job.
Lucas has a question for you, Dianna.
Dianna, I'm curious then, with the market for Mike Vrabel and all of this news, how does this impact Vrabel going forward and how other teams that bring him in for interviews will look at the prospect of hiring Mike Vrabel and what seems to be necessary in terms of roster control and what he might want at his next stop? Could that impact where Mike Vrabel lands next?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, look, it's still very early, and sometimes it happens when a name hits the market. It's like gangbusters, which it was, in terms of the interest, and teams that want to at least have a conversation with him. I think sometimes what happens as well is a team is around the same head coach for a long time, and you sort of you wear each other out, and then you forget the good and what you both bring one another. And I think that may have been the case in Tennessee as well, because I can tell you from the outside, there are way more questions about why Tennessee would move on from Mike Vrabel than does Mike Vrabel have a power problem? Is this someone that's just looking to just run an entire organization like we've heard other coaches do? Like Sean Payton comes to mind as someone who had that reputation and approached these job interviews, by the way, when he was talking to different teams before he eventually was traded to Denver, that this is what he wanted. And like, this is my vision, and I need this kind of power, and they agreed to it. I don't believe that that's how Vrabel is approaching this next job, if he even decides to stay in coaching or takes a year off or maybe try some TV.
I've heard that last point brought up for the first time yesterday, as a matter of fact, talking to some people, not with the organization, but around the league, that they think Vrabel might not necessarily go right back in.
Yeah, I think, you talk to any coach once they get fired, they usually get sick, because I think what happens is like your body just finally stops for a second, and like every disease that you probably fought off during the year just hits you. So he's going to be sick. He's going to be tired. And from all the conversations that I had with guys that were, we'll call it on the beach, while they waited for the next opportunity, they usually like the beach and enjoy hanging out. So we'll see. Now, look, I would be surprised if he decided not to coach. I just don't think that's his personality. I think he's young enough. They're empty nesters. They have nothing to do. He might as well go back in there and compete and do what I believe he loves. But sometimes you'd be surprised. So many of these coaches, they're not so defined by football as much as you think.
This was a very, very serious, very professionally conducted, well, maybe not conducted interview. I don't know what the hell we just did there, Dianna.
Bizarre. This was so bizarre. I've never had an appearance on this show where I was thinking about my wording and sharing information and really trying to come across as the senior NFL insider that I am at The Athletic. Like, this is the one show that I take the hat off and I'm just like, what's up, boys? Like, it's just my favorite show to do in the country. I barely report on this show, but I think because there is a sense of I think fans are looking for answers right now, and I understand it. I see it in my mentions, and I do see I feel like it's split, where there's a lot of hope from some in belief that the organization knows what to do, and there's some that I think it's going to hurt when Mike Vrabel gets introduced, or if he gets introduced as the next head coach somewhere. I think it's also going to hurt Vrabel. I think this could be one of those marriages we're going to look back on in a few years ago. I wonder if they could have saved it. I wonder if someone just spoke up and someone just took it and said, you know what, let's do it this way. Sometimes just talking it out is the way to get it done. But obviously that didn't happen. So I don't want to come back on the show ever again and talk about anything serious. So thank you for having me. Thank you for respecting my credibility. I know my credibility was hit a little bit considering that I did put out that article about Vrabel being safe, and now he's fired. So I have to sit in that, and I hope fans you understand how it all went down.
Oh, well, your credibility has never been dinged around here. You know that. We understand how this works, and the fact that this is the first time that you're taking us seriously as a show, I think, is the bigger takeaway here. Thank you for the time, Dianna.
Thank you, guys. Lucas is still the best. Appreciate you.
God, that hurt.
Couldn't agree more.
It just hurts. It hurts when she does that. That's Dianna Russini. We'll react next.